that's the boat we're doing. It's a reasonably simple composition, isn't it? So, but as usual, things are never that simple. So you're painting what you see and not what you know. This is the thing. I want to do something with the sky and the clouds that's a bit different from this, and a bit more. Just apply a little bit of imagination to the clouds, and just see what it makes of the boat. So, titanium white, cadmium yellow pale hue, permanent rose, cobalt blue, burnt umber, and ivory black. We've only got a little bit of ivory black. Give me a moment there for a second. I'm going to get some. Where did the ivory black go? Okay, can't find it. We'll just use what we have. So to change the camera. Right, we're going to start off, as usual, with a wash. So burnt umber. I'm making a very washy burnt umber mix with a turpentine and burnt umber, something like the consistency of milk. Okay, and that's what I'm going to use for my wash to bring the canvas down to the tonal value of the palette, kind of thing. So to make it more mid-range, because it's easier to work up from a mid-range up into the highlights and down into the darks from a mid-tone rather than a very bright white canvas. You can judge your tones better. Okay, so this brush is about 1 inch. It's a synthetic flat bright brush. Synthetic brushes work very well at this size. Okay, so I've got my wash on there. I'm going to tamp it down with my rag. Very important piece of kit, the rag. Don't forget your rags ever. They just become absolutely vital. What I'm painting on, for those of you who don't know, since I've run out of canvases and I can't seem to get any at the moment, is that. It's a Georgian oil painting paper pad, 7 inches by 10 inches. And very nice to paint on, I have to say. Got a lovely, lovely feel to it. And it's a nice canvas feel. You come up close, you can see the canvas texture on it. I don't work for De La Rowney, but I give them a bit of a plug there. They are good. Okay, so now I'm going to do my drawing. Remember, the whole point of this kind of exercise is to paint as if you're there. So you're standing on this beach, looking at this hulk of a boat. It is actually a shipwreck. So obviously, I'm not sure how much of it you can see, but it's beached. So we're going to kind of make it look a bit scuzzy. This boat will never sail the high seas again. Okay, so, I mean, the composition has been set for us, hasn't it? This is the thing about photographs. The photographer has set the composition, and the photographer has also cropped this thing so that it's wide. All right, but our canvas isn't quite like that, is it? We've got to lose something like that off the top, that off the bottom. I'm inclined to give it more sky than more land below. So I think we'll forget that, and we'll give it more, something like that. We give it more sky, work off this composition within here. Okay, that's the area that we're using. Let's give it a center line. That might help us with the composition. Give it a center line there as well. So we're going to kind of paint a bit of a union flag here because it'll help us know where we are on the canvas. When I'm doing a composition which is utterly mine, out of my imagination, I always divide up the canvas like this. I haven't been doing it with the still lifes because it doesn't seem to be necessary. Okay, so this is the way I always start off one of my own compositions, just out of interest. Another illustrator that I knew sort of just turned to me once and said, "Why do you do that Renaissance thing on your canvas?" Because he'd be more used to working digitally, where you got all these tools to help you. And the truth is, I just like doing it. It's another one of these things. It does help you know where you are on your canvas, but it's one of these things that is psychological. You know, I've started this painting, even though you haven't really done anything except draw lines on it. So where's the halfway point in this? It's great since it's an iPad. You've got all these things across that are nicely sort of spaced in the center. We know exactly where our center line is. And our center line comes across the top of that, I don't know, windbreak or whatever is on the top of the boat. So that's halfway there, like that. What's halfway up? It looks to me like that head of land there. Let's check it. And you'd be doing this even if you were outdoors doing it. So the halfway point is actually that spit of land, the bottom of that spit of land. Right. So we know that our spit of land is going to come across there like that. This is not like reality, is it? Because in reality, you'd have huge amounts of extra land going across here. Maybe another boat here. Maybe a bunch of people having a picnic here. We don't know that because the photographer has excluded them from us and basically forced us into this composition. But no, needs must, and we don't have any choice in the matter. We can see, so we're just going to use these things to help us. We can see that this top of the windbreak here just comes down a little bit from the top. So we'll say it comes down to about there. We know that the windbreak is there, something like that. We know that yes, that point, see, that's halfway, and that's halfway from here to here. That's halfway. That's handy because we've got a line here. Okay. So let's, and don't forget that drawings can be, you can put them down, but they can also be changed afterwards. See, if I do a diagonal line, we've got a diagonal line here, that might help us as well. Diagonal line from there to there. Ooh. That part, see, that's a curve coming around here. That part is actually on our line, which is bloody handy, isn't it? So we can put that there. And we know that that part there, so hang on. Center line again. Oh, aren't we lucky people? That's halfway as well. Look, we've got this area here, and that comes, that point, that end of the boat comes to halfway. Phew. All right, so we've got our halfway point there. Okay, so that's there. That's halfway. Those windows, that comes down there like that. And the best attitude is not to it's not to only make your mark when it's exactly right. Is to put your mark down and correct it. You're better off having something down rather than sort of trying to be super accurate. There, that's it, coming down there like that. And to be fair, this is the way you would work, even if you were there. there's no sort of, there's no difference, material difference between this painting from an iPad and being there in this respect. You're still doing this geometrical kind of approach. We're coming up here, there's a line coming up there like that. That's the sort of a kind of a stream. Right. That, see that spit of land coming across here with the green grass on it. You can just see that slightly darker line, and it joins perfectly with that part of the paint on the boat. Okay, so which comes across there like that, and then that gives us a way of getting this dark here. Something like that. We've got the land coming up. Land comes up a little bit higher than that. So it's not super accurate pencil drawing. If you took a pencil to this now, you'd be well into next week by the time you sort of got a drawing ready. Pencils sort of force you down this sort of this kind of road of accuracy and forensic detail. We don't want that. That's a dark down there. Okay. Now our sky. Okay. Oh, the land comes across there like that. All right. That's our drawing, really. So I'm going to start with some darks. Yes, I'm going to start with some darks. I think it's pointless showing mixing a color here because it isn't really a color. It's quite dark. This is very dark here. This is very dark here. Actually, this is a good moment to say what I usually say about getting the brightest bright in this composition and the darkest dark. And the darkest dark is kind of there, you know, bit in there. There are a few of them around. And the brightest bright is the sky. No, it's not the sky. It's this part in here. The peeling paint. I think that's probably the brightest bright there. Okay, everything else comes in between anyway, tonally speaking. And now we know that that's our human scanner done for this painting. So I'm mixing up a dark out of burnt umber and blue. Okay, so I'm going to put those in first. I call this the bones of the painting. Everything else kind of hangs on these shadows and darks. You do the same if you were doing a portrait. And it comes down there like that. Windies. I'm going to put that door in the dark here. I can always go over it later with a slightly lighter color. Okay. See, now the actual boat has become clearer to me. Dark there. Okay, I'm going to change my brush. We're can only find the brush I'm looking for. Is it on the floor? Yes, it is. Perfect preparation. Get some. Excuse me a moment. Pretty soon we'll be able to go to the beach and look at all the boats. Right, so I'm going to put in that kind of that orangey sort of rusty. Can't be rust, can it? Because well, I suppose it could. It could be rust that's descended from the metal parts of the boat onto the paintwork. But anyway, it's kind of an orange, isn't it? I'm going to put that in first. Just noticed something about my drawing. That's got to come down. That's down further there. And then that's further down because of it. Yeah. Now, I'm going to make up a kind of an orange, a browny orange. That'd be red, yellow, and a tiny bit of blue. I'm just going to put that in, kind of where I see it. I can always adjust it later. Okay. The color of the boat is very, very much like the sky, really. But I might change that. So I'm going to mix up a kind of a warm, really, because our job is to change things to the way we want it to be rather than the way it necessarily is. And we can apply our own imagination or our own style to these things. Put that in there like that. These are very much the same color. And once again, this is blocking in. This is an alla prima painting, so we're just blocking in all the time. I'm just going to add that in the same kind of way there. Now I'm going to move on. I'm going to move on to that sandbank. Okay, so sand, let's make a sand color, which is kind of creamy color. So white, yellow, and red. Just because it is a dull day doesn't mean to say we have to paint a dull day. We can change things and make them more vivid, I suppose. So I'm just going to put in areas where I can see that sand coming down here. And there's a kind of that sort of, I don't know what it is. It's kind of a growth that you see around sand all the time. That's an orangey color. Comes across the top there. And also slightly green as well as it comes down here. So I put a bit of blue into that same mix because it's the same plant, whatever it's called, and it comes down by the boat there. There's a green bit of grassy material going across the top of that spit. And so it's blue and yellow with a little bit of red into it and a little touch of white because it is actually pale. You can't make things brighter by putting white into them. You make them paler, but in that case, we did want it to be pale. Okay. Here, it's a bit like that too. I'm going to put that dark in, actually, that runs across that stream, or defines that stream. And actually is reflected down here. And comes in across there as well. Okay. There's a nice example of something here. I'll actually talk about it later because it's not quite the right time to do it yet. There's reflection here that's very important. That this whole thing, this whole sky, is quite sort of homogeneous or homogeneous, or whatever you call it. It's kind of the same kind of pale color. And that's reflected here in the water, going across here. Here, I've made a mistake. That's too high. That should be here. Across there, because that is the water. And then there's the land. And then the same thing is reflected here. And we've got to be careful, because if whatever I do in that sky has got to reflect here, here, and here, and here. Right. So let's do the sky. We'll make it blue and white, because it is a kind of a blue. Add a little bit of oil into that blue and white. And I'll make sure I make enough. And I'm going to block it in. Because the sky, as long as we don't overdo the paint now, we can do a lot with it after the fact, after the blocking fact. Start with the object. See, I went, change that there, change that there. So you're sculpting, went too far. See, we're giving it much more sky above that boat than there actually is because of that form factor problem that we had. Just going to just filling that area quickly. And that, in fact, that should have been like that along there. That's the same. This is reflected here. And so there's a reflection of that boat. We've got to be mindful of that. We'll just put that in there and we'll deal with that end and put that in there. See, none of these are very sort of finicky, accurate types of brush strokes. So this area here, that's kind of what? That's sand. It's quite warm. it's sand, and then it just gets darker as it comes up towards the underneath where the least light is getting through here. Okay, so let's make that sand out of, I should show you my palette. Yeah, so I'm going to make that color that we've just seen, but a bit of white. It's like the sand, so I'm going to keep it there where I made the other sand there. White, red, and yellow. More yellow. Right. So once again, this is like a mosaic, isn't it? We're just putting down areas of color. Put that down there. And it kind of goes up there a little bit there. Let's do that land. Now here's the thing, isn't it? You see the land. If you were standing there on that, by those trees, looking at that land, the likelihood is that most of those hills would be luscious green. But because there's a whole body of air between us and those hills, they're quite far away, that they're subject to what painters call aerial perspective or atmospheric perspective. Okay, so they've gone all pale. It's because that huge body of air and probably moisture that's between us, and it's just diffusing everything, making everything look pale. So we can make up the color that the hills might be. Let's make up the color that hills might be, just in general. Green. Put a bit of red into it to make it more natural green. There, so that would be the kind of the hills. But then we're going to put our sky into it. And that kind of is that's quite a sort of a logical way of treating it, because it's the sky that's causing this effect. So in painting terms, you just put your sky into what you're painting, rather than white. Rather than just white. I suppose the temptation is to put just white. So I mean that's that kind of helps you, but it also it'll learn you to make up enough paint, because you still need some of the sky left over to put into another part of the painting. And just put that in, okay? Now adjustments can be made later, but that's the sort of the blocked in version of what we're about to do, okay? What we're trying to paint. So now we've got almost the whole thing blocked in. There's this area here that I want to treat. So there is a lot of darkness coming up here. There's a lot of, what is it? Is it grass that's growing up around it? I suppose it is. It's grass and weeds. Very grey kind of grass and grassy weed stuff. I don't want to sound too much like a botanist. All right, okay, so let's put those in. Okay, some darks going across there. All dabs. Okay, there's... Right. I'm going to change my brush to that smaller one there now and start doing some work on the boat. And there's a slight... There's color variation in that boat, even in that horrible sort of messed up paint. You know, so in fact, yes, this is the stage where we've moved from blocking in to actually painting in the details. And as I was saying yesterday, that the blocking in kind of is the most important stage, really, because it sets the whole tone of the rest of the painting. Because you're really only sort of putting stuff into what you've already painted, just varying it. Okay, there's a slight warmth. That's reflecting the sand, I think. Here. Let's put that there. We're going to continue this area of dark, but it's not as dark. So I'm going to mix a little bit of white into that dark that we had here and put that in. And then the dark again. Okay, this part here is like this, but bluer. And we need to get across the impression that this is a derelict vessel. So you kind of need to get lots of sort of variation in there to just give the impression that it's old and worn and abandoned. I'm going to move that door over a wee bit. There. Because painting, as we know, is all about making a mark and adjusting it. Okay. All right, I'm just going to put those in there just to give myself a reference for later. Oh yes, there's some sort of stuff going on up here, which is kind of dark. We need to re-put in that area of green along there. Yes. In fact, that's like a mud flat along there. That's some dark stuff going on here underneath the boat. Building up in those mosaic tiles. The mosaic tiles are getting smaller. There. I'm going to put in some variations in here, in those hills. For a start, there's a kind of a dark tree line or shoreline going on as it comes across there like that. That'll give us a bit of definition. Here, put those slightly darker tones here, because there's quite a lot of trees here. Put that across there like that. I'm going to bring that shoreline down here. That's up too high. That sand. It's kind of a flesh tone, really. And here there's a variation. So there's a kind of a lighter, brighter part of the sand. And you could be sort of, you know, you can give it some welly, as far as another technical term from Florence, for your texture. You know, so you can add quite a lot of paint. Dab it in where you think it might sort of do some good. There. And up around here. So these are variations in hue. There are so many in nature, you know, that there's lots to record. And really, it's up to you to sort of decide, well, I'll put it in or I won't put it in. It's that's your job. Okay, what we got around there? Oh yes. So let's do some work on the sky. All right. So I'm changing to that brush. It's a nice sort of synthetic. What's that? About 10 mils. Maybe it's a 10. Doesn't have anything written on it. Got nice long bristles. And I'm going to do some work on the sky. First of all, I'm going to get the sky that I did mix up and add some white to it. Okay. And I'm just going to sort of... Now, who was it who was asking me about skies the other day? Was it you, Jer? Anyway, but somebody painted their own skies, but they weren't happy with the way they painted the skies, and they were wondering how to approach them. You can spend a lot of time doing skies. So I'm putting this up there like that. Okay. That cuts in there. Look, so we've cut in the shape of that boat. Put in some nice sort of lighter variations on this in the sky there, but the same color but with white added. Now I'm going to have the same color. I'll show you. So this is the color that I was using. There's the blue that I put down initially in the blocking stage. I added white to it. Now I'm going to add some pink and yellow and a bit of white. Okay. A bit of oil just to help it move. Right. Okay. So I'm doing the sky. So I'll just put in some dabs of paint, and we're going to sort of play with them a little bit, because just make it a bit more sort of smooth, I suppose. The sky goes darker as it gets down to the bottom. Unusually, it's because there's clouds. So I'm going to add more blue into the mix and bring it down here. And that gives me an opportunity to shape the land behind and just bring it down a little bit, because that bit of land is actually tapering off towards the sea. And over here as well, it's a bit darker. Just added a little bit of blue into my mix. Okay, so there are also, maybe there's, I'm going to add a little bit more, a little bit of purple. This is what sort of makes skies so interesting. You can just put in little variations. I suppose if it's not going to be a beautifully sunny day, I mean, a lot of paintings where everything is, you know, just sunny, or they can be a bit tedious, I suppose. You know, what makes Paul Henry skies so interesting is this volume of atmosphere that he puts into the paintings. Okay, so we've got some variation in there now. Push that down. See, sculpting that into shape. Now, because we've got that, we can sort of take some of the mixes that we have and put them into the sea. Because if you don't reflect that, it's not going to look right. The sea is being reflected, or is reflecting the sky. You kind of have to give an indication that that is going on. Sculpt that a little bit. And also, your strokes do not have to be in the direction that you're going in. They can be like that. And heavy, you know, you can put quite a bit of paint into them. And I can see now that I've got to bring that that water's edge down a wee bit, I think. Just to make it agree with the left-hand side. Bring that over there like that. Okay, and also, this has to agree. So there are those pinks in here as well. Bring that up. Okay. Let us work on the boat again. There's some browny sort of peeled paint sort of effect going on here, but don't sort of get down into total details here. Bring that down there and here. We can see the sky coming down here a bit. All those rails were put on at the end. You know, see those rails that go around here. There's that, I don't know, what is it? Is that what they call the gunnel going along in there? Some peeled paint effect here. Don't be overly sort of descriptive on it. There's a warm thing coming down here. We need the dark down there. I'm just going to use a bit of burnt umber. Just give it that reflection. Okay. Little bits of dark in here. more sand in here. Okay, a bit, I'm going to sort of lighten up the paint on the boat again. So as usual, we're bouncing around from part, you know, each different sort of part that we're treating in this painting. That window there, I'll put in sort of later. Oh yes, I was going to do the variations in the land. And they're sort of slightly brownish, but still pale, which is different from the green. And you could just see them. It'll just give the land a bit of definition. Probably a bit subtle, in fact, to see on the screen as it comes across there. It just gives the impression that there's fields. We were going to bring those trees down a wee bit, I think, weren't we? Okay, so I'm going to bit of tonal variation in here. It's kind of melting into the sand, this boat, isn't it? Right, I'm going to get a smaller brush. Where are you, smaller brush? There you are. Okay, that's a number 1. And that's just so that I can get some of those things done, like those rails. So I'm going to make up a kind of a grey, add a white, red, and blue, and yellow. And I'm going to put these in. So we're not going to be specific as usual. We're just going to touch them on, just give the impression that there's rails going on. That door is darker there. And then there's a kind of a window there. There's a portal there. There's a dark going across the top of the that windbreaker thing. Across the top of it there. There's some darks coming across there like that. Putting some stuff in here just for variation. Some pale greens in here. See, we're painting into the important thing that we'd already done, which was the blocking in. The blocking in is the kind of the average of the whole painting, and the details just planted on top of it. Dab, 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 dab. Just bring that in there so that it defines the boat a bit more. And in fact, as I see that, that can go up a wee bit there. There are some nice greens that I want to put in there. Like that. Don't be sort of, I can say don't be specific. I just keep saying the same thing over and over again, don't I? Don't get overly descriptive. That's a nicer way of putting it. And also, these areas aren't really the areas that people will be looking at. Mostly, they'll just be sort of studying the boat. The boat could go lighter, especially here. This is light here. Oh, and now that I've got the small brush, I can do my little window shapes. Put a bit of oil into that, light. I just dropped my brush. Now, I've got the paint sort of just raised on the brush, raised above the bristles of the brush, just so that I can just leave the paint on rather than actually brushing it on. Okay, I'm just using a grayer mix in here because there's an area of light because we're seeing right through the boat into through another porthole, just there. I managed to get a hair from the brush there. I'm just going to pick that off. Get off. There. The little sort of dings and things. It has a name, this boat. It's called Point Rey or something like that, or Point Reyes. King's Point, I suppose. It sounds like Spanish, really, but didn't look after their boat very well, did they? They're not going to get another one. They'll be getting it for their breakfast. Let's have a look. Shaping that there. Now, down here, there's an opportunity for us to put in some nice little variations. So we're going to take the sky color, the watercolor, okay, and we're going to sort of just bring it in little places here, just to show that there are ripples in the water. And here too, we can see the sky being reflected in certain places. Okay, but we can also see the same thing happening the other direction. Bring that into there, because there's a lot of water going around here. That's slightly. Okay. You make these little patterns and sort of little horizontal lines kind of help to make it look as if there's a reflection going on and water. Okay, so the same kind of color seems to be coming up here. Along here, the beach. Now, let's do something with with that sky. I just noticed a nice little sky there. Anyway, can't see it. Oh, there is sky here. All right, so let's do something with the sky. Let's get my soft brush again, that one I was using for the sky. I'm just going to sort of break up those where the tones and the colors meet each other. Just break them up a little bit. Bring them into each other, kind of thing. If I was Bob Ross now, I'd be saying the happy little clouds. Happy little clouds. Just relax. And I'll have to grow a great big afro. Can you imagine? Just bring those, tickle them into position. Okay, so now we've got some Irish clouds. Okay, I'm going to add some, I think I'm going to add some even pinker clouds into there. Clouds are like white, you know, that we always say about white, that they're multicolored. You have to really examine them, and then sort of you start seeing all sorts of colors in them. I've spent days doing skies in my own paintings, in the sort of paintings where I've sort of invented the entire scene. You're not satisfied with the clouds, and then you just keep going and keep going and keep going. And you can do that with paintings, yeah. Okay, I'm just going to add some of that into here as well, just to make the thing more, how do you say, homogeneous. I'm going to put something behind that to bring this out, because you can't, I presume, I can't really see the edge. Let me put that there. Will that allow me to do that? No, it's too thick. Maybe if I bring it up off the, no, it's sitting too close to the edge. I know what I'll do. I'll use this DVD, stick that behind there just to bring it out a little bit so I can, there, that's it. So I'm going to use this brush. I'm going to turn it into a blade. So it's a blade now, and I'm just going to sort of work some of this water like that. Look, just bringing it into the. That's a good way of making something look as if it's reflecting. And then similarly, you bring other stuff out into the water. Just little horizontal lines. It's a trick, really. But I mean, you can see it in very often in photographs. You can see, or even just yourself when you're out in the harbour looking at the river. It's easier to see it in rivers, you know, or canals and slow-moving bodies of water. It's gentler. So I'm just going to sort of I'm just mixing up a little bit of light blue here. To there. There's that little blue thing up there. I don't know what it is. It's just a. It can't have been derelict for very long. This this boat. There are things in it which are sort of. You'd be surprised that they're still there. Let me do that with another brush there. That's. So all we're doing now is just putting in sort of the last sort of details, really. Pushing this up. There's a bit of a dark coming down there. I don't know what it is, but it's there. The aim for it is to be as vague or on the cusp of being too vague to sort of see what it is. I'm rambling. That was nonsense. I'm just talking for the sake of talking. What am I doing? The aim is to show the object, but without being too sort of inviting people to sort of say, oh, that's not the right boat. But it's also to experiment with things. And now I'm going to put in some gratuitous heavy bits of sand, you know, heavily textured. The texture also sort of says something. It kind of gives a description of what you're looking at as well. I mean, sand is sort of gritty, and it's this kind of thing that you can put in as kind of heavy texture. From now on, it's whatever supports the painting, I suppose. Some darks. There are some darks missing on that boat. That might be nice to have in. Mix up some blue and some burnt umber. Bit of oil. Yeah, that looks like a knackered boat. Yeah, I wouldn't go to sea in a boat like that. Let's see what we can put some more ochre-y kind of clouds in. Let's see what happens there. Take a look at Paul Henry's clouds. Wow. Oh yes. Sorry. There's a lot of stuff going on here that which might be worth putting in. I'm using the blade of that brush, that bright, flat bright brush. Okay. And just sort of dragging it through. Dragging it through the already wet paint here. And it's kind of here as well, isn't it? Voila. I'm not going to do any more. I'm not going to do any more because I might balls it up. And that is always the danger, isn't it?
Fabulous.
Okay. So that's the painting there. Everybody there?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, so as you can see, I'm just going to sort of come up close because it is a whole succession of dabs. The whole point is, if you were painting there, you wouldn't get it right anyway. It becomes a question of getting the kind of thing kind of right, and then applying your imagination and whatever it is that you want to change it to. You know, like, do you want this to be a warm summer's evening? You know, is that what you're trying to get across? You're trying to get across the haziness and the cold. And it could be things like that. What are you trying to say about the area that you're painting in? And that's I have to say that's the hard bit, because you can get down into just painting what's there, and it becomes like just a referential shot, a referential photograph. You know, this is Dunmore East Harbour, but you kind of, but because you're painting it, it's not going to be a photograph. But you see really good painters, they do something extra. You know, it adds beautiful light or something like that. Yes.
Can I ask a question?
Please do.
You were using linseed oil to loosen up some colours.
Yeah, they call it lengthening. You lengthen the paint by putting linseed oil into it. And all that means is, if you just take pure oil on a brush and you draw a line, it soon peters out. And if you put olive oil into it, you can draw a longer line. I'm just saying that so that you know when you come across it.
Okay, but I don't have any linseed oil. Can I use zest it?
Yes, you can up to a point, because zest, it's not adding body to your paint. It's actually loosening already there. It's kind of loosening all the molecules and putting something that's not oil in between them. But when you're putting oil into there, you're putting in the same material that the paint is made out of, the same base material, and so the body doesn't change. It just becomes looser, which is more. It's more beneficial, I suppose, because linseed oil dries very hard. It's why they use it for varnish, and it also sort of it makes the painting dry at the same rate. I'm not quite sure what zest it does, but having said that, I've been doing it for years and years and years to no ill effect. It's because I don't overdo it. You don't really. You can do it for the wash, but for the rest of it, you can use a bit of zested or turpentine or Sansador just to loosen up your paint a little bit. It won't do a bit of harm. Don't worry.
Okay. Did you use the Sans odor for the wash?
No. Well, yes. I didn't use Sansador, but I used turpentine. But in that instance, it's doing exactly the same thing.
Right. Sorry, Kevin, is turpentine the same as white spirit?
It's not the same, but it does the same job.
No.
White spirit is the manufactured version of turpentine, in the sense that it's a product of the oil industry, whereas turpentine is resin from trees. But that doesn't make it any less harmful. Yeah.
Okay.
It's quite sort of strong stuff, I think. And you're supposed to put a lid when you finish painting. Yes, Kevin, you're supposed to put a lid on the thing and close it sort of tightly. Oh God, it doesn't even close. This is 4 bloody turpentine. Anyway, so that's it. I hope you enjoyed that.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you very much.
Lovely. Thank you so much.
Lovely.
It's
Thank
really
you.
nice.
Yeah.
And
Really
remember,
nice.
if you're going to paint from a photograph, make it yours and make it look as if you had actually been there.
Okay.
Because it's limiting otherwise and frustrating.